9th day of September 2022. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Schneiderman.
Here.
Councilwoman McNamara.
Here.
Councilman Martell.
Here.
Councilman Bouvier.
Here.
Councilman Schiavone.
Present.
Okay. So we're going to start this morning with the discussion of a pilot program to blink lights on at 6 various intersections. So this has been in the works for a couple months now. The Highway Superintendent, Charlie McCardle, was able to obtain permits from the county, working in conjunction with the police department to allow certain county intersections to be placed on blink. We've also been working with the state, Assemblyman Thiel and state DOT on some of the state intersections. And what we're looking to do is sort of test what would happen if we did sort of everything we could to try to get the morning traffic to flow. So if on one day, in this case it'll be 5 days, we set up these 6 intersections, which I'll go through in a minute, to blink from 5:30 in the morning to 9:30, would that make a difference? How big of a difference? How much would that lessen commuting time? How much would that lessen traffic on some of the back roads that absorb a lot of the traffic as people try to find ways around the main arteries? So there's the question of reducing commuting times and also lessening impacts on back roads, and how do you assess that? How do you measure that? And so we've been working together with Tom Neely, who's our traffic advisor, has been helping put this together. Captain Kiernan is here. Tom Houghton, our town engineer. Councilman Schiavone has attended a number of these meetings. Mayor Warren from the village has attended many of the meetings. The highway superintendent and various other individuals, public safety individuals, trying to put together a 5-day pilot program for the end of October. See if it works, and if it does work, how much does it, how effective has it been, and and what are the costs involved, so that we can start to envision a program in the springtime, in the run-up to Memorial Day and July 4th, where the traffic is at its worst, replicating such a program and figuring out how we could pay for such a program. I've already reached out to the county executive, so that he is aware that we're doing this as a possible source of funding. The county was instrumental in the past when we did the CONE program, in terms of funding the CONE program, which ended up starting as a 1-week pilot, but went on for months and months and months on County Road 39. So I'm hopeful that this will work. And let's sort of go through it a little bit. I don't have everything I need in front of me, I don't believe. Tom, do you want to go through the program a little bit in the 6 intersections?
Come up to the table here.
Sure.
Tom Neely with TFN Advisors.
And we did pass a resolution already, right?
Yes.
Setting the public hearing for this. Okay.
Yes, and the resolution outlines the intersections and the restrictions, as you know. I can go through those intersections. There are 6 of them tentatively on the list, I should say, or planned to. What we've done, it's in the resolution, and then it's also now being turned into a base press release that will be used for public outreach through the media and through Facebook and other avenues to get out to the public. It'll be County Road 39 at Tuckahoe Road, County Road 39 at McGee Street, County Road 80, Montauk Highway at Canoe Place Road, SR 27, which is Montauk Highway at Tuckahoe Road. As I think you folks know, County Road 80 turns into 27A between Hampton Bays and in the area of the college. So it's 27A Montauk Highway at Tuckahoe Road, 27A at St. Andrews Road, and Route 27, State Route 27 Montauk Highway in Watermill at Station Road. Those are the 6 signals that are envisioned. At those intersections, as was in the resolution and has been agreed at the group, those signals would be set on blinking, and so they'd be yellow signals for east-west traffic, which allows those vehicles to go east-west without stopping at a red signal. Also allows them to make right-hand turns. North-south traffic will have a flashing red signal, and they will only be allowed to make right-hand turns. When you approach the intersection from either north-south or east-west, you will not be allowed to make a left-hand turn. So that's in the resolution you adopted. It will be repeated a couple of times in the press release and through social media. That's the basic of it. Again, working with our working group and Tom, and Tom and the captain may want to come up and join me for this part of the discussion. We plan to take several steps to evaluate how this works. We're going to monitor the traffic flow. We're going to monitor traffic volumes. We're going to look at turning movements both before the test and during the test, although turning movements will be very restricted during the test. But we want to see before and after how many vehicles would normally make those left turns or go straight through. We're also hoping to be able to look at crash data during the pre and the during and post period, because I think that's something else that will help
Hopefully there won't be any
give
crash.
the board together. Well, it's interesting. One of the things I'm doing, I started doing a couple of weeks ago, is I'm measuring travel times using Google Maps. And I picked Macy's in Hampton Bays, I picked Town Hall, and I picked King Cullen in Bridgehampton. And 2 or 3 times every morning, generally around 6:45, 7:45, and 8:45, I'm measuring what Google Maps is saying the travel times are. Seeing a lot of interesting stuff, which I'm sure we'll compile, when we come in and do an evaluation when it's all done. But one of the things that I've noticed already is that we're averaging almost 1 accident a day. Almost every single day, there's an accident up somewhere between Sunrise Highway up between the canal and between Watermill. There's generally at least 1, sometimes 2 accidents a day, which clearly impacts traffic flow.
And that would include fender benders, small and, God forbid, large. I mean,
Right.
Okay.
And I think when we get to the evaluation stage, again, working with the town police and actually pulling their data, we're going to see, I would guess most of these right now are congestion-related fender benders. But again, that's one of the things I think we want to look at.
So in terms of doing those measurements, one of the resolutions we did the other night was to authorize the hiring of a company to do the traffic counts. So
Yes.
that's put in place already. And we've picked
Yep.
a whole bunch of back roads that we know normally get pretty congested when the main roads are not moving. So do you have that information where we're doing the measurements?
Yeah, I do.
I know Little Island Road,
We've
Little Cobb Island or Cobb Island Road.
picked out several roads. Tom
Tom, do you want to come forward and
is kind of reviewing this list
can
one
get it.
more time, so we may.
Captain, do you want to join us at the main table here? Because I want to talk about, I know one of the county requirements is police officers at these intersections, so I want to make sure we have adequate personnel.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Well, Tuckahoe School and McGee Street, how is that going to work for buses in the morning? And teachers and staff?
That is one of the intersections we've discussed, that the highway superintendent was going to speak to the school district. In the past, and we have done this in a couple places over the years, never as comprehensive a program, but we never did do McGee Street prior to this because of some concerns about, getting to and from the school and buses turning. I think that's an issue or a
We can make
topic.
accommodations for school buses to make that turn if we have a police
I
officer.
can mention right now that the highway superintendent did speak to the school at Tuckahoe yesterday, and then he asked if I thought that it would be okay to allow school buses, because it's a big burden on school buses to get the kids to school on time, and to change their routes for a week is too heavy a lift. So I believe we'll have the police presence to allow school buses
So school buses
to
will
come
make the
to and
left.
from Tuckahoe without
I think that's fine.
restriction.
So an officer can stop traffic.
To cross.
And then, so the only lefts allowed will be at Sandy Hollow and then at North Sea Road?
The Sandy Hollow, you can't make a left out of Sandy Hollow right now.
No,
No, you're thinking
you
Shrubland.
can make off of
left.
39.
Oh, to go in, I'm sorry.
Going east.
Yes, Sandy Hollow, right, yes.
And North Sea Road.
Sandy Hollow would be allowed, because that signal will stay in operation.
Okay.
And I think what we say in our,
Yeah, North Main, is that the other one you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah.
That'll stay in operation too.
these 6 intersections, and this is what we'll, do in our
David
public
White's, you can make
outreach.
a left to.
Those 6 intersections will be restricted as to turning movements. All other intersections,
Flow is normal.
there are no changes in restrictions. So Shrubland, Hill Station, Sandy Hollow, and then going east, North Main, David White's, those would all stay the same.
Before we get to traffic counts, Tom, would you kind of review the manpower on this and the operation and how this is going to be set up each morning and who's going to be manning the intersections? Does somebody address?
Yeah, so Captain
Maybe
Curie.
I could speak for the police department, Councilman. So from west to east, at County Road 80 in Canoe Place, there's one Southampton Town Police officer. At Montauk Highway and Tuckahoe Road, there's one Southampton Town Police officer. If available, I'll have a TCO. It doesn't look likely. At Montauk Highway in St. Andrews, there's one Southampton Village Police officer. County Road 39 and Tuckahoe Road, 2 Southampton Town Police officers. County Road 39 and McGee Street, 2 Southampton Town Police officers. And at Watermill, at Station Road and Montauk Highway, there's 1 Southampton Town Police officer, again, a TCO when available. That's the manpower on the lights in the morning.
There's
Okay,
also
good. And this is-
Highway Department also is setting up the cones, so they have overtime
Beforehand.
associated, yeah.
Right,
And
signage
the-
and cones.
And we did a resolution the other night amending the budget, putting all the money in place for this. It's not inexpensive, this one-week trial program.
No.
Between counting the cars and setting up the cones and the police. I forget exactly what the number came in. I want to say close to 80 grand. But if we do this on an ongoing basis, the costs are probably closer to about 50,000 a week, maybe a little bit less as we're able to tighten things up.
So you're doing hand counts, or you're doing pneumatic counting?
We're
Machines,
using
pneumatic-
ATRs, using
Okay.
pneumatic tubes.
Yeah, that had me a little worried.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, so if it comes in at, let's say, $50,000 a week to do this, if it's successful, that becomes sort of our baseline expense. And if it really works well, and we want to run it for 10 weeks, we're talking about $500,000 we're going to have to get from somewhere to do it. And we can have that conversation a little bit later as to how we might pay for this. But at least we'll know if it works,
But there
and we'll
was-
know approximately what it
But
costs.
there was also a discussion about you don't have the
There-
manpower,
there-
even if we threw money at it.
Right. To get it done for the week is a strain on us.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Well,
do it
You'll
for
you'll
longer.
have sergeants and possibly lieutenants at these intersections.
But it
because
will
we don't have enough policemen.
conform to New York State vehicle and traffic.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We'll have it covered, and the permit will be.
No, but that
adhered to.
issue of manpower, so let's say it's a 20-week program in the springtime, and it's $1 million. Then they have to hire the people to do it. Have to figure out where that million is coming from, but then the police can gear up with, I guess, traffic control officers.
No, these have to be full
Hire
officers.
people for the 20-week period.
But didn't you say these have to be full officers?
Yeah, blinking light
Can't be
requires,
TCOs.
blinking light requires a police officer.
So we can't do a shared services thing?
Can you
with
do a
the
seasonal
sheriff's
or
department?
temporary or
Yes,
part-time?
seasonal could work. I'm going to use seasonals here if the full-timers, if we don't have enough full-timers, I'll be using seasonals here.
Right. So it's a little premature in a way, in a sense, on that conversation.
I just want to
But
make, you know.
they don't currently have the staff to do, they're gonna manage the 1 week.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're gonna do this on a continuing basis, we'll have to sort that out, obviously, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So back to my original question on the shared services. I know the county's instituted that in other areas, with sharing with the sheriff's department as well and other manpower. Have you guys looked into that at all?
I did make a few calls in the very beginning, and nobody volunteered to help us with this pilot.
No,
This
but-
is a pilot for 1 week. We're really talking about next spring,
Sure.
possibly
Yes.
a longer
That
term.
would be
Longer-
John, I think
another
that-
conversation.
That's a good suggestion, good possibility that we could reach out to the county, not just for dollars, but for manpower.
For manpower, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you get into these territorial disputes if you start bringing Suffolk County PD officers out into our terrain.
No.
But sheriffs might be a
Give and take.
possibility, you know. So there might be other personnel resources that can be used, personnel resources. Councilman Scavone, were you done?
Yes, I was. I got my question answered about compliance with New York State vehicle and traffic law. Thank you. And how the thing is being set up. I know there's signage that has to be installed, temporary signage, which is significant. And then each morning cones are set up to
Right.
divert and direct traffic.
Yeah, we want to let the public know in advance that this is going to happen. Even so, there's going to be some people probably the first day or two that have to adjust to it. Hopefully by midweek, you start seeing the patterns change and people know that the light's blinking, they don't have to slow down so much for that intersection. Otherwise, you get skewed data. So, you know, we're going to do our best to let people know. We're going to put some digital signs out on the roads like a week ahead of the program. Right, Tom? That's sort of how that works. We're going to let the drivers who routinely drive on the road know that next week there will be a test program.
Right. I think as far as publicity, we have another one of our working groups next Tuesday, and then I would think after that, we may be in a position to begin that would be about 12 days before actually the pre-test period starts the 17th, the actual period, be in effect the 24th. At that point, I think we would start the outreach, the signage. I think Ryan Murphy was obtaining signs. I don't know, Jim. if
Yeah,
you
he had
heard
a
anything.
tough time with the county. Their signs are all out, but he's reached out to the state and he's waiting to hear.
Good. I think some drivers are getting accustomed to it because we've been doing it at Canoe Place Road in the mornings and in the afternoons, Canoe Place Road and St. Andrews Road. So we have been ongoing blinking lights, and it's been pretty effective. At least that's what people are telling me, that Canoe Place Road seems to really work, and the St. Andrews light. So maybe drivers are getting accustomed to driving through the blinking light without overly slowing down. So again, we go back to certain, in terms of where we're measuring back roads. So I mentioned Little Cobb Road, because that's a lot of cars, when they see the traffic at Pier 1,
Okay.
it's not Pier 1 anymore, when they see the traffic near the Southampton diner, it's also not the diner anymore, they go straight down to Wickapog, and then they come up Cobb Road into Little Cobb Road, and then they feather in there. So that's one of the places. If the Watermill light is blinking, we're hoping that it reduces significantly that back road traffic.
Right.
But give me some of the other back roads.
We had a list, our last working group. Tom has reviewed that, and I think he's got ideas on updating that.
I've expanded upon that to talk more about light number 6, the Station Road light. We'll be measuring Little Cobb, we'll be measuring Old Mill, which comes in from the north side, to figure out how many vehicles are cutting across traffic.
Okay.
Potentially slowing that down, and then looking at both 27A and 39A to figure out what the amount of traffic going onto 27 is and how many are going around for the cut through, as well as Seven Ponds Road, which is the cut through to the north. So
Right.
we'll be kind of looking at a comprehensive view of what that light affects, potentially to see if it continues to back up further.
And are we doing
Those-
Head of Pond or Scuttle Hole? or-
Yeah, those would be in addition to some of the ones we've talked about previously.
Well, I figure if we monitor Seven Ponds, it's almost indicative of Scuttle Hole and Head of Pond. Seven Ponds is at the four-way stop sign where it starts to back up. Most of those vehicles come off of David White's Lane. those vehicles typically, in my experience, continue on to Head Upon and to Scuttle Hall.
I'm trying to, there's like a lower Seven Ponds, upper Seven Ponds.
Yeah. So
Head
off of
Upon.
David White's and then on to Seven Ponds. If we grab it there before the four-way stop sign, we've got the farm field on the left-hand side of the road.
Yeah, not, as long as on this side of.
Yeah, because then we can grab the amount of vehicles going on to lower Seven Ponds, Head Upon, and continuing on, and then we'll have the monitor at Old Mill to see which vehicles are continuing through there and making that left. So we can kind of grab it in two locations, but get 3 sets of data.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, because you have two joining,
Yes.
yeah, that's always the issue there, right?
Yeah, so
That's fine. So this traffic all ends up on Scuttle Hall.
a portion of
A lot of it.
some of it continues down to Old Mill. So that's why we're going to try and grab that right
Okay.
there. And then this is a big source of slowdown because
Yep.
people are, they're either dangerously cutting across traffic or the eastbound
Right.
traffic is letting them.
Or waiting
Old
for
Mill.
somebody.
Right, so all that relates to the
courtesy let them
watermill lights. So
Yes.
where are the other measurers?
The other lights, if we want to go back to Canoe Place Inn, the CPI light, we'll be grabbing on Old Riverhead Road
Okay,
east
good.
before Bittersweet, so that this will capture both sets of cut-throughs onto Montauk Highway. We'll be retrieving data just past the canal, and then we can use these 2 sets to figure out what portion is on Montauk Highway already, what portion is cutting in, and what portion is coming from CPI.
Okay,
And then I'd like to measure North Road as well, so we can kind of get a sense from there is how much is coming through this intersection just to go back north. So
Why wouldn't you be on Canoe Place seeing what goes on to Montauk Highway from there?
we are, we're gonna,
Right,
Okay.
just
Yeah.
south of
Okay.
we're gonna,
Montauk
we're gonna
Highway.
measure right off of Canoe Place, but on our physical town road of Canoe Place. And then we can use these 3 points here to figure out what's coming in and what's already on Montauk Highway. I don't really have a great way of accounting for the vehicles making the U-turn at that point, but
so,
in the grand scheme of things, I don't think
so
it'll be.
just, it's sort of obvious, but I need to say it. So we have been blinking the Canoe Place Road
Yes,
in the morning. So if we're gonna measure before and after, we're gonna have to shut that blinking light
We
down
already
for.
have.
It's down now.
Down for 3 weeks.
It's down for 3 weeks, right? So maybe it's,
I think
maybe
that's
it's
a
perfect
determin-
timing.
Right. I think that may work out very well. And I've also.
People not gonna want us
As
to
long
take
as
it
it
away,
ends
but.
before the program starts.
Right, right. Because again, these measurements will be taken the week of the 17th, which is the pre-24th, which is when it's running, and then the 31st,
And
when
we're
it's
gonna-
over.
We're gonna
So,
take a week after too, so we're gonna have to shut that light down and not do it that week, so we can see
right.
how effective that blinking light is.
Can we tell the county that we need it open with the light for that week? With their work going
Well,
on?
the county told me yesterday that they believe that the sidewalk work will take about 2 weeks, and then they're gonna switch after that to milling and paving. And that's gonna be done at night. So yeah, the road's gonna be pretty rough,
But it'll be open.
but it'll be open. So we should be okay with that, and obviously some of that's gonna depend on weather. So that 2-week window should be fine. We're not doing this till the end of October. What's the measurement week? Is the sort of middle October?
the 24th.
The 3 weeks, right. Week before, the week during, and the week after.
The 24th is when we're running the program.
Correct.
So the week before,
17th.
the 17th. So it's close.
Well,
It's gonna be close, that 2-week window.
Right.
because you have your public hearings on the 11th, right?
So that may skew the data.
Well, I will
That
say,
interesting.
and I think before we start our official conversation, I was talking about some of the measurements I'm taking right now using Google Maps. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but you can see changes in time on days that I think the blinking signal's on and days the blinking signal's not on. So
And we do
again,
have-
we'll have
we
to
have
coordinate with the highway.
Feedback from residents that works, like we know that works.
Right.
Right. And the other aspect of that is that installation of the right turn lane out of Canoe Place Road. We're going to have to quantify when that was being used and when that was not being used. Because again, I think I can see that in some of the data that, that I'm pulling off of Google Maps. But we'll have
Jim,
to
are we in the
confirm.
morning, are we blinking in the morning at St. Excuse me, at St. Andrews or just Canoe Place?
We have TCO issues, so most of the time, no.
Most of the time?
Most of the time, we are not.
You're not?
Yeah,
So that, blinking St. Andrews technically could also affect all the way back into Hampton Bays.
In the college, right?
So I travel that route every morning via bicycle, so I get to see all of the traffic from start to finish. And the St. Andrews Light, there is a gap of traffic west of the St. Andrews Light that I don't believe that St. Andrews directly affects all the way back to
Hampton Bays.
Hampton Bays.
So what about Tuckahoe?
Tuckahoe it does. So St. Andrews Light will back it up through Tuckahoe. But St. Andrews seems to be the controlling light for this traffic as opposed to the Tuckahoe light.
Okay.
Tom, I have a question about your data in the morning. When you said when we were blinking light, traffic moves better or faster or more. Does that take traffic away from the side roads? When I use Google, it gives me suggestions. Hey, take Fanning to save 3 minutes. Are you seeing that is eliminated with the
Well,
blinking light
I think
on,
that's one of the things I think we're going to have to discuss further, because I think that right turn lane coming north on Canoe Place Road, because I'm getting that also. There's some days that Fanning is actually recommended as an alternative. And-
Right.
And I think that may be connected to when that right turn lane coming north on
People are
Canoe Place
going.
Road is in effect, and then it's not recommended, may be days when that's not being utilized due to the county drainage work. So that's
The
another.
county
Right.
work that they're doing when they repave the Montauk Highway, they are creating an extra lane on Canoe Place, a turning lane, that doesn't currently exist, that I think we've sort of been creating it ourselves, but the county is actually making a turning lane.
So
Should help there.
in terms of
I don't know
goals,
when the lane markings will be done. It'll be after this program is finished.
They are creating, okay.
But that's a turning lane on Canoe Place, but it
Canoe
doesn't
Place.
give you a turning lane on Montauk Highway.
Not on Montauk.
We're creating one when we have the cones up.
Right.
So more people tend to flow down Fanning, take Dune Road, because they know they have an easy right-hand turn with the cones.
Right, right, and that's what I'm seeing in the
So we're
Google
pulling
Maps.
people into the neighborhoods.
yeah, to move through there. And as far as goals, is it to get people to work faster? Yes. Is it to keep people out of the secondary, out of our neighborhoods? I believe that is a main goal. Do we have agreement on, like, those are kind of the basic
Yeah,
goals?
that's
Keep
what-
people on the main highways and let it flow?
Those are
a
the
little
two
bit
things
better.
we're measuring.
Right.
Basically commute times and the impact on back roads.
I
So let's.
just wanted to mention, there's a couple more roads that I think, Tom, we have to finalize here. A couple more things on the roads that are being measured. The highway superintendent wanted Pleasure Drive measured. He feels there's impacts up there.
We did do that, right? That's
So
on.
that's included right now, I think,
I
and
would like to discuss that one.
we'll discuss that.
Just 'cause
Okay.
it almost doesn't have any effect on the traffic lights that were blinking. There's such a huge discrepancy from the point at which traffic ends.
Because you're going from West Hampton, basically, they're getting on Pleasure Drive. way
Yeah,
up there.
I think we'll discuss that. The
I also
highway
haven't seen any
superintendent
traffic on
had a
Pleasure
different theory
past
about
2
that.
months,
But,
so.
and then Noyak Road, we were talking about Noyak Road
Yeah,
also.
Noyak Road, I think, is important, because you do have people go all the way up to Sag Harbor just to avoid Watermill and Bridgehampton, and, then they drop down. Sometimes if you're heading all the way out, let's say to Montauk, you'll go, and, drop down in East Hampton somewhere, Amagansett.
It's the
Just
second
to-
major thoroughfare.
Yeah,
going
so
through
I think Noyak Road, I think, is really important to measure, because some of that traffic is bound for Sag Harbor, but probably more than half of it is not. It's just going that
Going
way.
to, yeah, and again, you do see that on Google Maps when there's an accident in Watermill. Some of these back roads we're talking about then become the recommended route, so.
Yeah, so keep going with places we're measuring.
Now, I think we're, so I'm sorry, Tom, go ahead. Do you have more you want to talk about, or?
I was looking at measuring North Sea Road, just north of the intersection with County Road 39, to figure out how many vehicles are making that left to eventually either head to the back roads or head up to Noyak
Okay.
before
Are we
Main Street.
measuring Sabonic at all, or Shrubland?
We decided not to because we felt that the no left turn there precluded people from
Right, but if
going onto that road.
People
with
might
this-
turn at McGee I don't know how many, and then try to go up Millstone Brook Road and North
We
Sea
did get
Road.
complaints about the
But you're not going to be able to
westbound
turn at
traffic.
McGee unless you're a school bus.
You won't be able to turn on McGee, but when the blinking light's going, but when it's not going. So then you see the before and
Oh, for
after.
the week before.
Yeah.
So you're saying measure on North Sea, but where on North Sea? You want to do North Sea near County Road 39?
Yes,
Not way up on North Sea?
not way up, because that allows us to capture Major's Path and North Sea Road.
Okay. I mean, there's a cost, obviously, to each one of these measurements. It sounds like there's more we originally had said 8 or 9.
Right. And
Now
we
it
also,
sounds like you're at 12 or 13.
We're still within the same budget, though.
You are?
I was just
We
going to
are.
say, the board adopted a budget not to exceed 29,000, which was the original
28,
estimate.
I think.
28?
Yes.
Which was the original estimate from the company we're hiring. So one of the things that Tom and I have talked about doing is the turning movement counts that I mentioned at, Tuckahoe and at McGee, a couple of the key intersections. That was in the original proposal to have them do it. They actually videotape the intersection and count the cars. We may try to find a way that we could count those turning movements in-house by, placing an employee up there and literally counting, left, right, straight, and maybe save a little bit there that we could then expand the list where we're measuring roads.
Let's continue the spots where we're measuring.
Sure, so looking at the 4 lights in Tuckahoe, we'll be measuring Montauk Highway, just west of the St. Andrews light, so we can see the amount of vehicles that are heading through that intersection, what we've increased the flow through that light. County Road 39, west of the Tuckahoe light, so we can pick up that flow down 39. County Road 39, just west of McGee, so we can continue to see if that flow stays the same. And Tuckahoe Road between the 2 lights, so that we can kind of see what the north-south traffic looks like through there, and if people are jumping from one highway to the next.
Okay.
So just the aerial view here?
Yeah.
So you're doing this at a certain time of year, depending on the data that you gather on this? Will you come back with recommendations on either repeating that in a different traffic conditions, say summertime traffic, or move that to other places? I'm not sure what you're going to do with this data in that regard, because we're looking at it in one small slice of a year.
Sure.
And I don't know what the impact is on other times of the year, or whether we can interpret some of this data. I'm sure we can, but you have to prove it out also, so.
So in my opinion, we're looking at the core area of the town that all pretty much experiences traffic from Easter to Thanksgiving. So what the effect that it'll have is maybe it won't back up to Quogue anymore, it'll back up to Hampton Bays. I think the core area is almost indicative of the summer traffic. We still have a great amount of cars on the road when they get to those bottlenecks, so.
But we need to know that, don't we?
October is probably, and I'd have to go back, but from, analysis in the old days, when I was here, full-time, October is kind of a typical, like the average month of the year. I think the volume is probably 60 to 70% of what it is in, April, May, June. I think doing it in April or May be ideal in terms of peak congestion time. But I know we know the board wants to, be ready to make a decision prior to April, May. So
Right.
I think we're going to try it now and extrapolate,
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think
Some
you can do that to some degree, but if you make an investment in front of that, on a permanent basis, you're automating something, or, starting to make serious infrastructure investments on that. I think it's just a little dangerous to only base it on one segment of the year.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So, and we're doing it for 5 days, which is important, because there's been times when it's been done for 1 day, and it's really not useful data, because people aren't accustomed to the intersection change, and they slow down, they see the police vehicle on the side of the road, they think there might be an accident or whatever. So it's really not, it's not good data. This, hopefully, by doing it 5 days, at least the second part of the week would be pretty good data. So we've talked about how we're measuring back road impacts. I want to go now to talk about how we're measuring commuting time improvements. And we have a couple different metrics for that. Tom, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I've mentioned a couple of times that I'm currently measuring with Google Maps their estimated travel times, and I'm going to continue to do that 2 or 3 days a week, from now and, through the end of this program in the last week of October. In addition, we put a log together, if you will, for, and I think Tom has the enviable task of finding some drivers that will keep a log of when they, where they live, and we're just asking really for the nearest intersection. We don't necessarily need their home address. From where they live to where they go to work. I think right now we're focused on town hall employees, and they'll, every day, we left the house at, 8:10, got to town hall at, 8:50 or whatever it might be, which will also help supplement
Are we
the
making them
information.
take the same path, though, right? They can't take back roads, they have to stay on the main road, or?
I think we talked about them following the same path. It might also be interesting to find out what back roads they use, because again, I think.
Well, I mean, both would be useful data.
Right.
How long does it take you to get to work?
Probably
But,
yeah.
But I would sort of want to know if they jumped into into the back roads.
So we are going to ask which route you do take, and if it changes throughout the week.
Mhm.
And then we'll kind of be able to extrapolate from there. As far as
And then I
measuring,
think Highway is also putting some people,
I'm not sure of that, but I know that.
I think they are, I think they're going to have drivers, or you're going to have drivers? Somebody said they were going to have drivers.
My division's going to have
But
drivers.
Highway did say they would volunteer.
And you were going to put drivers?
Yes, we'll have 6 drivers on the road, and then myself and one of our project managers will be doing 15-minute spot checks at each of the intersections to get a sense of how well it's moving. The traffic counts will give us vehicles per hour, but only eyes can see if it's stalled or if it's moving quickly or just what the general sense of the flow is.
So just hold for 1 second. So the traffic counts will give us some commute time data, because it'll tell us how many vehicles went through an hour.
Yes, we'll know flow
So if
rate.
we have a lot more vehicles going through an hour, we can assume that the commute time is shorter. But then we'll have some actual commute times
Yes,
to add to
so
that too. Okay.
I'll have
But
stick.
you have no acceleration data on some of this with
Yeah,
big
so that's
trucks, so-
that's why it helps to have a person out there and get a 15-minute count. But we'll have 6 staff members in individual vehicles running both routes on each main road. So we'll start the first pair off at 6:15. We'll send one vehicle down County Road 39 starting in Quogue. We'll send the other vehicle down 27A starting in Hampton Bays. They'll run it all the way to pretty much Watermill, at which time they'll turn around, drive back, and then switch routes, because each one will finish at a different time.
So you do Montauk Highway and Sunrise Highway?
Yes, they'll stay on that main road, they won't deviate, and we'll get basically the travel time throughout. And then we'll.
And they're going to do that starting a week ahead of time?
Yeah, we have to do it both weeks.
Both weeks,
Yep,
okay.
so-
You're not doing 3 weeks, you're not doing a week after?
We have the week after too, but if,
You have to have the benchmark, you have to have the comparative.
yeah,
and you have to have
at some point, if I have 6 staff members spending 3 or 4 hours each morning, we'll need them on other items, so
Right.
we'll balance that out. But then we'll send the next 2 staff members out at a 30-minute interval after that, so we pick up 6:45 and then 7:15 and then 7:45. And since it takes on average over an hour, maybe an hour and a half on some days to get from one end of town to the other, we'll need that second and third set of drivers in order to actually get all of the data. So,
Okay,
We will,
so that's how we're measuring commute times, that's
Yes.
how we're measuring back road impacts.
I think it's the
I
only
think
way
you
to
had
do it.
also suggested, and I've followed up with reaching out to East Hampton Town to see if they could find
Oh,
2 or
right, so we
3
could get some drivers.
employees of the town or teachers out there or something. They're going to try to hopefully find
You
us 2
talked
or
to
3
Joanna?
people that would fill, yeah, I've reached out to Joanna.
Just a crazy question, but I know there are insurance companies that actually equip cars with data to help their insurance, and their positional, they tell data and acceleration with some of, might make life.
we have some GPS trackers, but the time frame that we have to do this.
I mean, they're already built
Yeah.
in. If you know somebody who has that insurance company and has that in that program.
Yeah, I don't know if.
You
if
could do
they
it, you
would
could
give
do
us
with Life
access to their
360,
data.
right? Easy enough.
What's that?
You have somebody put Life 360 on their phone and you can track it through their phone.
No idea
That
what
is,
Or Google Maps.
Yeah.
that's, Google Maps and Waze actually are tracking the phone and, when you
In
go
your
to work
car
every
already,
day.
yeah.
That's how they're compiling their data is.
Every
When you
phone.
push the little button that allows them access to your phone,
that's
In real time.
how they're compiling this data. But yes, that, and as Tom said, I think we talked about the GPS that are in some town vehicles, but I don't think that's gonna.
That's why
work
it's
out.
so hard to turn your phone off.
So,
All right, so that's pretty much the program. It's, again, there's a lot of people involved here. It's a coordinated effort. We're hoping it makes a significant difference. You know, we haven't really figured out what that means yet.
Right.
Is 5 minutes significant to the commute? Is a half an hour, is 45 minutes? Obviously, a half an hour is a big difference in commuting time.
And if you have an accident, it skews a lot of
know,
your data as well.
You know, if it costs $50,000 to reduce the commute time by 5 minutes, is it worth doing? Probably not, you know, but if it costs $50,000 to reduce the commute time an hour or half an hour for 10,000 people, probably is worth doing. We just have to figure out how to pay for it, so. how we-
Congestion in the neighborhoods,
Exactly.
back road congestion.
Yeah.
Keeps our neighborhood safe.
Yeah.
Neighborhood safe.
Which does go
exactly,
back to
so-
the traffic volume counts, that, you know, one of the reasons we're putting them on some of these side roads is that's exactly what we want.
Right.
Do we lower the traffic volumes on Little Cobb? Do we lower the traffic volumes on Shrubland, or, you know, whatever it might be?
So we know how we're measuring success. We haven't really discussed how we're defining success. I think some of this is going to be anecdotal, where people go, oh my God, you know, you've made my life so much better, you know, by reducing, you know, the amount of time it takes to get to work. So we'll probably hear from our constituents. I think right now we just compile the data. We see how much shorter the commute time is. We see how much less congested the back roads are. We see how much it costs, and then we make an informed decision. That's, I think, how we have to approach it. And so defining success may come later, and the bang for the buck.
This is Brazier's equation stuff, right? So you're going to want to see complexity into this. I mean, I could see over time, that's why, you know, 1 week is fine, but over a longer period of time, there's more opportunity for that. Anyway,
Right.
cool.
You know, and does it transpose what we do in October to what happens in April? I don't know. There's too many variables. There's more traffic in April and May than there is in October. And, you know, it could change things a lot. Well, you might hit a critical mass where these intersections just don't move. Or the lights back up and even though you have a light blinking, the next light, you know, turning red is backed up through the intersection, and it's not making a difference that it's on blink. So,
And then there are the people who live along these routes. Along County Road 39, Montauk Highway is not a limited access highway. There are homes, there are neighborhoods that come in and out. We're flowing traffic. They can't make a left turn, or they probably shouldn't make a left turn. It's,
Yeah.
we're going to hear from them too.
we are, they depend on those lights going red so that can punctuate the traffic enough for them to get out of their driveways. So that's going to be an issue too. You know, we'll have to consider that. All right, any other questions about the blinking light program? Good luck.
Do we have another 2 hours?
We're continuing to meet. We have another meeting coming up.
Wednesday, I think it is, yeah.
So appreciate everybody's effort, and I hope it's a success. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Have a nice day.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks. Tom and Tom? Tom?
Tom's cluster.
Okay, so,
Tommy John, right?
Square. Tom Square.
all right, we are going to move on to the next item. Wow, we're right on time. It's scheduled for 11:15. Good job, Janice, with the times.
Keep it going.
All right, so John, you want to come forward? And Nina? Both members of the board of the Pine
Morning.
Barrens Society. Welcome.
Hello there, how are you? Are you keeping him under control?
You know him, yeah.
Yeah,
Always lovely to see you, Mr. Turner.
it is.
Oh, I'd like to hear more about this one.
Jim knows most people on Long Island.
Yeah.
There's a game,
Jim,
6
for
degrees of
Brookhaven days or
Jim.
county days or both?
Yeah, Brookhaven days.
Brookhaven days.
Yeah, we worked on a number of,
1817.
yeah. Well, thank you Supervisor. Shea.
Yeah, thank you for
Members of
coming.
the-
Good to see you as always. So we're going to be talking about what, the Pine Barrens Society?
The best of the rest. Do you, okay, great. Dinah's going
I
to
think
hand
you
out
just
the
hand it up.
document.
Are you doing a PowerPoint or no?
No.
Okay.
Just a,
We'll follow along. So are you doing this with other towns in the Pine Barrens?
yes, we have met with the town of Riverhead, we've met with the town of Brookhaven. I've reached out to Peter Scully to meet with the county executive soon, Al Krupski of the Suffolk County Legislature, and then also some state reps, as well as acquisition people, both in DEC and also Parks and Recreation.
So, maybe even before you get started,
Yeah.
if we could do like that 30,000
Yeah.
foot view, because, I'm pretty familiar with the Pine Barrens, serving on the commission, the state
Sure,
commission. And I think every board member is aware that a portion of Southampton is in this state.
Significant portion.
Significant portion.
You guys are key.
So, yeah, can you just talk about what the Pine Barrens is,
Sure.
how it got designated as a important region?
Be happy to. You wanted to introduce yourself first, Nina?
Sure.
Just,
So I'm Nina Lenhart, and yes, I am a board member and have been for quite a while. In the other part of my life, I'm a STEM educator, and I work with people from kindergarten through post-grad. So I cover the spectrum, all areas of science, technology, engineering, and math. My discipline happens to be engineering.
and me, for those that don't, I'm John Turner, and I'm a co-founder and a current board member of the Long Island Pine Barrens Society, and have been involved in open space projects and wildlife habitat issues on Long Island for too many decades now.
And John, so the
So,
Pine...
yeah, you want me to give you 30?
Yeah, and maybe before you do that, so the Pine Barrens Society is not the Pine Barrens Commission. I just
That
want
is-
to make that distinction.
Yes.
The Pine Barrens
Absolutely.
Commission is a state commission. The society is a private, not-for-profit advocacy organization.
Yes.
So what you're hearing today is from that.
Yes, this is an
society.
FYI presentation for your information only, nothing more than that. You can decide to accept all of this, and hopefully you will, but, or you could decide to accept part of it, or decide to put it on your shelf. We hope you don't, but.
Or continue discussions, which
Yeah.
is what we
Okay.
really like.
So with that, yes.
Yeah, so to fulfill your request, for those of you that may not be totally familiar with the Pine Barrens preservation movement, how it kind of got started is, it's hard to know where to start, but I guess I'll say that probably the famous Long Island 208 study, which was a study that was funded by the federal government through the EPA, and money given to the Long Island Regional Planning Board under the aegis of Dr. Lee Koppelman, you remember, and they worked for many years to come up with this study. It was their first real look at how Long Island's groundwater system worked. And that study, there's a lot in it, but to me, the kind of takeaway points of that is that they identified that Long Island land surface can be broken up into really three, more than eight groundwater zones, three of which are what we call the deep flow recharge zones, where raindrop when it lands on the surface will move vertically downward through the upper glacial Magathy, ultimately Lloyd Aquifer, before turning sideways and welling up into the salty water sediments on both sides of Long Island, most notably on the South Shore, And beneath that, those aquifer segments is the basement of bedrock that underlies all Long Island, slants about 50 feet to the mile to the southeast. And so that out in Southampton here, you've got particularly the western part of Southampton, you've got a very deep aquifer. As I'm sure you already know, it gets shallower as you go west, to the point where you get up by the Throgs Neck Bridge up in northwest Nassau County in the Queens, you actually have superficial expression of bedrock. So it slants like this. So
50 feet to the mile.
about 50 feet to the mile to the southeast, yeah.
What's
yeah.
that in roof pitch terms? Go on.
Oh, okay. And so we realized that there was a connection between the land surface and the aquifer system and the drinking water supply underneath. And a number of other studies documented the connection between water quality in that aquifer and uses on the land surface, density of uses, residential types, commercial, industrial, and varying, again, densities of residential and the amount of septic systems per acre and all that sort of thing. So that was a factor. At the same time, totally independent of that, for many, many years, us tree huggers spent a lot of time learning about the Pine Barrens, reading the historical literature. If you go back hundreds of years, I mean, you go back to, some of the patent writing and early literature like Benjamin Thompson's 1823 document. They talk about the Pine Barrens and it's being a pretty neat place. Even George Washington mentions the Pine Barrens, even though he wasn't particularly impressed with it. He said it was a place with ill-thriven pines, and this was when he made his, Engelbright tells me all the time, his tour that he did, throughout the western part of Suffolk County, and he went through Quorum and some other places, and just wasn't real impressed with the interior of the island apparently. But he knew about cherry trees. He didn't appreciate, I think, pine trees so much. So anyway, but a lot of early interest about the natural history of Long Island, and came to realize that the Pine Barrens, besides its very significant hydrological and watershed importance for Long Island, is an ecological treasure trove. In fact, the greatest density of rare and endangered plant and animals in the entire state of New York is not the Adirondacks, it's not the Catskills, it's not Tug Hill, it's not around, the Great Lakes. It's, believe it or not, in the Long Island Pine Barrens. And secondly, your famous Long Pond Greenbelt, just to the, that's totally captured.
And, on that,
Yeah.
those big maps there, so the Pine Barrens region is largely the green.
Yes, that's right.
The big massive green.
And so what happened was,
Pine Barrens.
back in the late 1980s, the Pine Barren Society became increasingly concerned about the amount, and Jim knows this quite well, he was in the middle of it, quite concerned about the amount of projects, residential, commercial, and again, mostly a little bit of industrial projects that were being proposed simultaneously in the three towns. Just people go through the normal, development review process. There was something, I think it was like 232 separate projects. Now, there had been some acquisitions. We had gotten the focus of government. Suffolk County, you may remember, had, you may have been, you weren't there in 86 though, right? No. So that'd be, you're younger than that. But there was a 1986 $60 million open space bond. A bunch of counties been absolutely wonderful about acquisition. So there's a lot of very positive steps. But despite all the land acquisition that happened, including the DEC's acquisition of 7,200 acres, the David Sarnoff Preserve and the Rocky Point properties, that kind of being what we thought maybe the bookends of this very large regional preserve. Despite all that good work to acquire land as open space, and we mentioned that in here, the Pine Barrens was still threatened. And it would have become, like to call it awkwardly, a Swiss cheese ecosystem if in fact it had been developed. There was a lot of land acquired, but there's a lot of land in between that could have been privately developed. So, long story short is the Pine Barren Society said that the State Environmental Quality Review Act requires that when there's a nexus, a connectedness, or a commonality, that you have to undertake a cumulative impact assessment. And we said, well, you've got these 232 projects, there's a connection there. And what was happening a lot, quite frankly, was, because I saw this very much happening, was there'd be one development application on 60 acres, or let's say 100, I'm making this up, but 100 acres, where they'd say don't really be worried, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, concerned about this development because there may be some contamination of water, that we're going to be putting cesspools in there, but you've got all this other land around that's all undeveloped. And by the way, the red fox and the whippoorwills and the box turtles and the other wildlife that's found on a property, they'll be impacted by this project, but they'll just move to each side. And, well, that's fine. They said that, but then the person next door was saying the same thing with development. So you can see how just this individual environmental review fell apart. So we needed to have this cumulative impact. What happened was the Pine Barren Society, along with many partners, filed lawsuit in Supreme Court in Riverhead about this, and we did not prevail. We brought a challenge to that in the appellate division in Brooklyn, and they overturned the judge's decision, saying, yes, in fact, the SECRA says you need to do this kind of cumulative impact assessment. The towns, including Southampton and others, appealed to the State Court of Appeals in Albany. The State Court of Appeals overturned the appellate division. So, but what the State Court of Appeals said was, don't come to the judiciary to do what the legislative branch has to do, what the legislature has to do. They found, if you read the document, they said you made it a very persuasive, overwhelming case that how the protection of the Pine Barrens benefits Long Islanders, but we don't follow the argument that there's this cumulative impact requirement. Go to the legislature, have them craft your solution. So we did. We turned in Dick Amper and others, and Ken McDonald and myself, and I know others did just that. And working closely with Tom DiNapoli, the assemblyman, carried the bill in the assembly, and then to his everlasting credit, Ken Lavelle in the Senate carried it. And ultimately, after much discussion and arguments and give and take, the 1993 Pine Barrens Protection Act was passed by the legislature. Both houses overwhelmingly went to Governor Cuomo, and he signed it into law. And so, since 1993...
The mapping, right? The mapping of the core between
Yeah,
the core
exactly.
and-
And so what, and it's just going to...
That was Mario.
Perfect segue. So I can say, so that...
Mario Cuomo, yeah.
What's that?
Mario.
Mario
Oh,
Cuomo.
what'd I say?
You said
Governor
Governor
Cuomo.
Cuomo. I just.
Oh, yeah, Mario, I'm sorry, yes.
No,
Mario.
it was Governor Cuomo.
Two.
It was
Oh,
just
sorry. I thought you, yeah.
the father.
Back in the, yeah.
It was in the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mario Cuomo, right.
Yeah, it was Governor Mario Cuomo. And very quickly, so there's two provisions in that act that are probably most important for you to keep in mind. One is the creation of this Pine Barrens Commission, 5-member commission, again, it represents the 3 towns, the county, and the state, that have a number of responsibilities, but one was to really oversee the development, preparation, and adoption of a comprehensive plan for the Pine Barrens. And that did happen. The commission staff was hired, that plan was developed, and that was adopted in 1995. At that time, Governor Pataki had replaced Governor Mario Cuomo and came down and actually, there's a ceremony that took place. The other major provision in the Pine Barrens Protection Act is the establishment of 2 major areas within the 105,000 acre area of the overall legal description of the Pine Barrens, and that is a compatible growth area and a core preservation area. The core preservation area is slightly larger than the compatible growth area in terms of acreage. And by the way, there's been a number of amendments we'll talk about to that act and to those areas in a second. And so the core preservation area is distinguished by the fact that basically development is not allowed, with very limited, and Jay, you serve on it, so you know that some exemptions or some occasional hardship, applications will come to the commission. But it's really difficult to develop within a core preservation area, and that was on purpose. And what we did at that time was to have basically again, I would call it a 3-pronged constitutional stool, as James Tripp used to say, to provide ensure no legal infirmities to the act. One is to have the government have land for acquisition, and for the first several years, the state of New York provided $10 million a year to buy land. So if you were a private property owner in the core, obviously, based on the U.S. Constitution, you can't have your property taken without just compensation, and so we had to consider that. So there was a lot of acquisition that took place. There's also the hardship provision, again, that would provide another, but then the third component is this, what we call the Pine Barrens Credit Program, where each person who owns land in the Pine Barrens is assigned a credit, Pine Barrens credits, the amount to be determined based on a formula in the comprehensive plan. And so, again, Jay maybe has 100 acres, maybe he would, and it's based on the acreage and based on the zoning, right? And so you know how many credits you get. So maybe it's 10 PBCs. Those 10 PBCs can be sold on the open market to a developer to use in other places in the plan that those credits can land. So that's the other major component those are the 3 major components of the core. The compatible growth area, which kind of surrounds the core, development is allowed, but the development has to take place or occur in conformance with land use standards, again, that are delineated in the plan. Basically trying to, while allowing development, ensure that the vegetation and the wildlife habitat, to some extent, can be maintained.
So there's restrictions on clearing certain amount of open space set aside. There's something like 37 standards and guidelines that have to be met
Yeah.
for you to develop in the compatible growth area. But it is set up for development, the compatible growth area. It's not for preservation, but as long as you meet the guidelines and
Right.
standards.
Right. And so since that time, there's been a lot of, again, continued acquisition of land by the state, DEC, to a lesser extent by those of Parks and Recreation. At the county level, the county's done, again, a remarkable job at buying land. And then again, the three towns have done a remarkable job, I think, in acquiring lands using your various revenue sources. And so collectively, we now have, in the ballpark, what, 55,000 acres, somewhere in that area, right?
Well, it's closer to 106,000.
No. 50, that's acquired, it's in the open, that's publicly owned.
In
Yeah.
that area, right.
Is that including the retired credits, John, or is that?
Yes.
That's just, okay.
That's between the three towns.
That's in the that's in the core preservation area, and to a slight, to some
So
extent.
there's like 56,000 publicly owned.
Yes, acres, much of which is contiguous, and again, you show it kind of bit to the Southampton, you can continue into Brookhaven and go up into Riverhead. Again, the overall area is 105,000, but there is development that occurs within that, and it's development that's occurred, prior to the passage of the act. So there's development within the core, because these people, they built in 1947, long before the act was
Pre-existing.
But there's been a concerted, coordinated effort by those 5 levels of government to acquire land. And I think we're delighted by it. We greatly appreciate your commitment to what you've done in the town of Southampton. I know with the CPF, I'm jealous because I still work for the Brookhaven, and I'm jealous we don't have some revenue source like that.
You tried.
We tried, and it went down, and we tried it.
I keep, every time I see Ed, I bet.
He's supportive of it, it's just.
I know you guys did an open,
And the Pope, by the way, I worked closely with Ken McDonald when I was with the main person at the town, maybe that's why it went down, but anyway, the campaign, and
you did an open.
the polling showed it was gonna pass, and it failed like 57-43, I think.
You did like $100 million open.
I know, but with 2004, yeah, the town's been good. The town's had 3 major bond acts of totaling $130 million at Brookhaven, $10 million, $20 million, and then the 2004 $100 million bond, all 3 of which were put before the voters, and all 3 passed overwhelmingly.
Right, but
And so,
just comparatively, our CPF fund will bring in $100 million in a year.
jealous.
In a year. So you're talking
Good year.
about $100 million over.
Not every year.
Well, can you buy all of the lands here? We're done? Jay, please?
I've had some requests from years
So
ago.
anyway,
Are they in
So-
Southampton?
Again, setting it up, I want to set it up to make the point that much of the work's been done, and using a sports metaphor, football season has started. We're collectively at the 10-yard line, and we could punch it into the end zone and finish the land acquisition effort, we think, in the next half decade, I think, or decade at the absolute most, but shorter than that. And we think, and again, if you've got other ideas, that's fine, but we've looked pretty carefully at the map, what's remaining. And these 15 areas really target the places we think have environmental, hydrological, and ecological value that merit continued acquisitions. And if this is done.
We have similar things in CPF
Right.
to acquire, our
Right,
priority
sure,
properties
yeah,
and things as
yeah.
well, so.
Yeah, no, I realize you've got
Intent is-
farmland, you've got a lot of.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
You want to go through what you're asking?
Yeah, and so anyway, again, you can read the beginning. So what would be achieved if we move forward with this is there'd be a number of important accomplishments. One, this.
You also understand, we only work with willing sellers, right?
I understand. Yep. I realize your CPF you cannot use eminent domain with the CPF funds. I realize that.
I think it's only been used one time when we did it in Brookhaven.
Yes, yeah,
on the
Brookhaven
farmland
did it.
piece, yeah.
Well, actually, we've done eminent domain during my tenure twice. Once on a large farm parcel in
Yeah, that's somewhere I remember.
in the Mandeville Farm Protection Area. Then a small piece since you left in the old historic area of the Terryville racetrack, the horse track.
Oh, okay.
We had 1 outholding left. And anyway, so the moving forward, this proposal will achieve the following: help to safeguard groundwater and surface water quality, including at both the Carmens and Peconic Rivers. Preservation of 3,000 acres will assure the recharge of approximately 1.7 billion gallons of clean water to surface water features and the underlying drinking water aquifers on an annual basis. And quite frankly, just for your own information, what that's based on is if you speak to folks at the U.S. Geological Survey, they have documented, and this came out also with the 208 study I mentioned before, but been fine-tuned or honed by much more additional research for each square mile of land on Long Island. On average, 2 million gallons of water land each and every day. Now, of course, today there's not going to be any water landing, but again, that's about 1 million of that, million gallons, about half of that is lost to the system. That is, those greedy, thirsty plants pull up a lot through evapotranspiration. You have evaporation as well. And so only about 1 million acres actually recharge per square mile.
Yeah,
If
because
do
you
the-
have surface deposition here going
Yeah.
on. Okay.
Yeah, so any land that you acquire on Long Island pretty much has a hydrological or water quality benefit to it. This, moving forward, this proposal would enhance the viability of area-dependent wildlife species, such as things like whippoorwills, a wonderful bird that you have out in Southampton. Every third week in June, around a full moon, I lead a hike to listen to for whippoorwills and chuck-bill's widows. Those are two wonderful species that are really area-dependent. And those species and species like box turtles and eastern tiger salamanders, they are both area-dependent and really vulnerable and sensitive to habitat fragmentation. And so if we do continue to preserve it, this is one of the key issues I want to point out, is that, we have worked hard to create a contiguous, connected system, with the Pine Barrens. It's vital that occur because of the habitat or biological or ecological requirements of a lot of these species, as well as in terms of being able to manage these areas. So if this, again, happens, it'll help protect these species. It'll certainly enhance opportunities for ecological management activities in the Pine Barrens. And I know, Jay, you get at the commission, you get a report, I'm not sure if every meeting, but certainly frequently by the stewardship staff at the commission, things that they're working on. Such as invasive species control and prescribed burns. And this has great relevance to number 15, which I'll talk about in the end. And as does the last one, enhancing recreational opportunities by providing access to new landscapes and facilitating trail creation. And so there's two basic sets of properties that we've laid out here, specific parcels and then kind of targeted areas. And so we just run through it quickly. The first one is the shore and property, and I want to make the point, which I've underlined here, is that almost all of these properties, or all of them, have already been included de facto in the New York State Open Space Plan, the 2016 iteration of the New York State Open Space Plan, as being eligible for acquisition by government, as well as many of them have also been included in the Suffolk County open space,
So
master
John,
list.
most of your properties are outside the town of Southampton, right? I think this. So,
yeah.
but I mean, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm just gonna run through it quick and so we've got the shore and property, 800 acres on the North Shore. I just want to make the point that we have amended the Pine Barrens Protection Act with the support of the town of Brookhaven, with Ed Romaine and the others. We actually got legislation that expanded the core preservation area to capture the shore and property, so that became part of the core.
Is that the LIPA property?
Yeah, that's the LIPA property.
LIPA
Now, the
National
state
Grid.
DEC, just FYI, is in the process of appraising it for acquisition. It will become the largest and newest major state holding on Long Island, if that indeed occurs. Number two is key parcels along the Peconic River in the town of Brookhaven on the south side. It's sandwiched by DEC land, and if it was to be developed, it would really have an adverse impact. Again, it would create that undesirable fragmentation. Number three is in your town, and it's a really important set of parcels that we call the Hogan and CCP Limited, Liability Corporation properties at Hampton Bays, just east of Sears Bellows County Park, totaling about 100 acres in size. My understanding, and I stand to be corrected if you know better, is that these are parcels that, while they're in the core, they are eligible for development because they got their approvals prior to the adoption of the 1993 Protection Act. That's also the case with number two here, this one in
I'm not sure of
Brookhaven.
that. Do you know, Jim? I didn't think they were, I thought they were core, privately owned.
I can
core.
check. I mean,
I'd be delighted to be proven wrong about that. In fact, they are captured by being
There
in the
might
core.
be sections of that that's in compatible growth, and some is in core, some is in compatible growth. I think the compatible growth area, and they might be critical resource areas.
Yeah.
There's
We'd be
so-
delighted if you would.
There might be some of it that is development eligible at some level. Some of it's core, though.
And it's wonderful, if you've been out there, it's.
And I think there are some
It's on the-
discussions going on.
There's what?
I think there were some outreach on these properties.
Oh, okay, great.
For
Well, thank you for
CPF
doing that.
acquisition.
And any approvals, if it was
It's
applied to
subdivided.
1993,
Yeah.
I would hope that they're expired at this point, but we'll.
I don't know, you know better, but
Yeah.
that's what I heard, so that's why,
And I would-
besides, I mean,
That's
it's,
east of, John, you saying east?
yeah, it's just east of Sears Bellows.
There's more than one
We
piece.
did it. I know the
Yeah.
county, we bought
It-
that
it's
big
been
piece,
subdivided,
We call it the whole.
even though it's
donut.
not
It was
developed.
the, Smithers
But
property, that was.
just
over
a
there,
quick look.
in that general area?
Yes, it's
Yeah,
just,
that was
it's just
Mrs. Proper.
south, and actually, they bulldozed the road and paved the road in for the development years ago. It's still the road, we just drove in on it to see it, I took some beautiful photos, it's a gorgeous property, rolling topography on the moraine, again, deep flow recharge zone for water.
It would be great to see that
Off of
part.
Sears Bell?
Off of 24, right off 24, not,
By there every day. I'll take
just a little bit north of, where 24 intersects with Sunrise Highway.
It literally adjoins the Jackson Avenue complex, where our,
Oh, it's on the north side?
No, this is on the south side,
This is on the
south side of 24.
South side
no,
of
south
20.
side.
Yeah,
But-
it's
but the
just east of
Hogan's-
North
Hogan's-
Bellows.
Hogan's
27.
pieces, I think, join up with our,
Oh, I
landfill
think they're on both
properties.
sides, yeah, that's.
It's
yeah.
like a whole bunch of parcels. It's a whole bunch of parcels
Yeah.
in there.
So that's one area we think really would be highly desirable to continue to bring these parcels, into the public domain to. And another just thing about this, where they're located is that it's probably the most significant parcel from the perspective of public safety. On Long Island, in the Pine Barrens is a fire climax ecosystem. It needs to burn or it will burn. It's based on sandy soils, droughty soils, the surface dries out a lot. Pitch pine and scrub oak both have waxy cuticles. They built-in flammability, and so the Pine Barrens evolved. And it's kind of weird to think about this, but and survives because of the presence of fire, which you often think of as a destroying force.
Small fires.
It perpetuates there's certain ecosystems in the United States that needs fire. The prairies out in the west. Anyway, a lot of pine forests do too, and the Pine Barrens is like that. So where this development is situated, particularly in the south side of 24, you've got this whole fire shed that if there's a fire that starts further to the west, in the 50,000 acres, it works its way east, which it would do on a fair day because the winds come out of the west on a fair day, right? And the fire would be sustained. These properties are right in harm's way. And so it's almost unique from a fire shed perspective, these properties have additional value.
Do these pines have serotinous cones like the dwarf pines do?
Generally, no. They have normal open
Okay.
cones. Yeah, you typically have non-serotinous cones on tree-sized pitch pines and serotinous cones on the dwarf pines.
Got it.
And that evolved because of the fact that those serotinous, if they had normal open cones, they'd be destroyed and the seeds would be destroyed.
The wildfire, right? And the wildfire was actually environmentally a positive thing.
The 95 wildfires, both up in Rocky Point and through the dwarf pine plains, yeah, were definitely something positive. And as you know, again, the commission has a prescribed burn program that they've been implementing since 1995. I think it needs to be given some greater horsepower, if you will, and really start burning forests and burning woodland, which I understand is greater sensitivity about because of the fuel load and the potential
But
impacts.
the recovery
Yeah.
in West Hampton, where the fire was, is not great.
Yeah, it's very hot.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the 95 fire?
Killed
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
the cones.
Oh, yeah, changed.
Instead of opening
Yeah.
them.
The ecology changed.
You're absolutely right. The Nature Conservancy did some, if you knew Marilyn Jordan, she did a lot of work. She was a community ecologist at the Conservancy, and what they documented was actually a reduction in the density of dwarf pines and an increase. Scrub oak survived it.
I was wondering about that, yeah. By the way, a serotinous cone is a cone that, with a small amount of fire, it heats the cone so it opens up and disperses seeds.
right.
So, but with a hot fire, it just
It can
burns the
burn.
cone.
Yeah, that's what happened. It
Pine
burned.
bomb.
It just incinerated the cones in
And,
place.
and we
Although
are
I did-
concerned about the fuel load on the bottom of the floor.
Yeah.
6 lane.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. What a great group. Wow. You should be talking to us. Anyway, so that's that property. Number 4 is again, back to Rocky Point. Well, that's the very large 5,200 acre area that would, again, served as a catalyst for the Pine Barrens protection efforts back in the late 1970s. Throwing out another name, you remember the name, the Governor Hugh Carey. Well, Governor Carey was in place at the time that this property and this David Sarnoff Preserve was acquired by the state of New York for the ungodly sum of $1. And at the time, I was told it was the largest corporate tax write-off involving land anywhere in the United States. Been eclipsed many times since then. But anyway, so that's the Rocky Point property. We want to see additional acquisitions that occur there. Number 5 is the Mandeville acquisitions that really relate to the Pine Barrens Trail. Again, you folks know very well, you have a very vibrant and robust trail preservation society in Southampton and in East Hampton. Trails for hiking opportunities is something that's important here. And you have the Pine Barrens Trail that starts up in the northwest corner of the Rocky Point property, goes through the Pine Barrens, becomes the Palmadoc Path, and then continues all the way to Montauk Point. So that's number 5. Number 6 is the very large holdings at EPCAL, town of Riverhead. We've met with Riverhead and urged them to work to preserve a meaningful section of that area. Number 7 is 700 acres of Rose Breslin's property in the town of Brookhaven, just south of the expressway, just south of B&L and east of William Floyd. And we are working right now to try to have that perhaps mostly acquired through a TDR approach. We have now at 150 acres of the 700 acres, and we're taking those development rights granted, and we're landing them in the northwest corner of the William Floyd Expressway and Long Island Expressway.
The old Palm Meadows.
Yeah, exactly. Palm
That's
Meadows.
that's some development to have.
Number 8 is some land along the Carmens, a number of parcels. 9 is another set of parcels at Brookhaven, just east of the Middle Island Conservation Area. Number 10 is the Spinney Hills. Now, I know Jay's going to talk about this, I know, because this is where the Hills is located. We strongly believe, and I know we may agree to disagree, but we strongly believe that the whole Spinney Hills area should be brought into the public domain. The quality of that land there is every bit as good as the land that's in the core just to the north, on the north side of Sunrise. And while I realize that the Hills probably, and again, this may move forward with, but we think that the Hills property parcels itself, as well as some other outholdings there, are worthy of protection.
Well,
And the reason why I say that is that, and I look to you folks, you have already preserved a lot of land in the Spinney Hills already. So you've recognized that area has environmental significance, as well as the state of New York's acquired the 200-acre piece, that wonderful parcel to the...
John, I'm sure you're aware that the town did appraise the property, did make offers to acquire the property.
Yeah.
And, those deals, were rejected, and the property was taken off the market, said that they would
Yeah.
not consider acquisition. So, our CPF program is a willing seller program. And so, it's been going through the process of as-of-right development.
Understand.
And, but it does include, I think, 400 acres of the 600 acres as open space. That is because of the Pine Barrens restrictions, as well as our own aquifer protection overlay restrictions. So of the 600 acres, 400 would remain open wooded acres.
Okay.
So,
You've included it in here, even though we know your
Yeah, we know.
position, what's going
Yeah.
on, because this again represents what we see as
The best of the rest.
The best of the rest, that would be, if we had our druthers, this is what would be
yeah,
considered.
well, when I was at the legislature, I also, when it was owned by prior owners and it was for sale, I actually went to the Pine Barrens Society and asked for help in trying to get the county to acquire that property. And I did end up overriding the county executive's veto of the planning steps resolution. And we were going to try to do it with the town of Southampton. And town of Southampton never gave the county what it needed in terms of a management agreement on the property. And then eventually it did change hands. But there was an opportunity that was missed, I felt, to acquire that land.
So here's, our perspective is, again, I've been around so long and seen so many projects fall to the wayside for one reason or another ultimately. And again, that project may move forward, it may be developed. In the event it isn't, I mean, we're working on Plum Island now, we've been working on that for 12 years. I think we're going to achieve success fairly soon with that. Hampton Hills, I mean, Long Island's littered with dozens of, not littered, because now a lot of them have been preserved, but a lot of development applications that for one reason or another were very viable and live for a while, but never did,
Yeah, no, appreciate it.
that's all. So, yeah.
No, I'm one of the people that was personally sued for $100 million for a vote against that project, so I understand what you're saying, and I totally agree with you. And I think we do have some other properties that we could look at. The
Yeah, there's
limitation
some
on
in that area,
CPF,
yeah.
obviously, is the willing seller part.
Right.
Willing seller, you know. Yeah, I might prefer to see the property preserved as well, ultimately, but if we don't have willing sellers, then it's going to get developed, and how it gets developed will depend upon town zoning and
Right.
planning board and the other agencies involved, so it's.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
It's not currently in front of the town board. One piece of it will be back in front of the town board, I think, but it is in front of me as a Pine Barrens commissioner, so I also have to be careful there, too.
Right, yeah.
Well, that would be
Okay.
the second time it was in front of you.
We are apparently the lead agency to that.
Yeah, on the secret.
Right. Well, okay. 12 is just land back in the town of Riverhead, north of EPCAL. There's, surprisingly, there's a number of pieces, both 11 and 12 are north of EPCAL. So you're driving on Middle Country Road, you've got the large EPCAL property on your right with the airport there. On your left is several hundred acres that we're very interested in trying to work with the town of Riverhead to bring into the public domain. Wonderful woodland hiking opportunities, fields.
25, John?
What's that?
North of 25?
Yeah, north of 25, yeah. Both west and east of Fresh Pond Road, if you know where that is, the north-south road
Yeah.
there.
How's Riverhead done with their money? I know that the CPF was pretty low.
Not-
Yeah,
not so good.
Yeah.
Not
I
too
wish
good.
they had,
We spent a lot of it back when I
if
was.
they only had half the money you guys had, I mean. Anyway,
Mostly to pay off the bonding from their prior.
well, that's
right,
this year.
13 is in the town of Southampton, and this is, if you could just imagine, I'm sure you've done this, you drive down County Route 111 from the expressway, you're getting ready to get on Sunrise Highway, but you don't make the left on the Sunrise, you
That's on the
drive
east
carefully
port.
around the crash barriers, then just pull over. That extension, there's a whole several hundred acres of Pine Barrens forest there that also takes in the watershed to Seatuck Creek. There's some opportunities there. I think the county's been doing a good job at buying
Where is
some
that?
land.
Is that's Southampton?
That's
what
not, it's actually.
That part of it,
It's mostly in your,
Yeah.
in Southampton town, it's a little bit in Brookhaven.
It's kind of
that
north of
core?
Old Country
Seatuck.
Road and.
It's
Yes.
kind of
right on the border.
Quag area.
That's core preservation area, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We have
It's
actually done quite
privately,
a,
the fee is privately owned, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
we've done
yeah.
quite a few acquisitions.
it's not
in that area,
developable.
though. We've done farmland development rights acquisitions, we've done full fee acquisitions in that area, and that's definitely a target area.
14 is just, again, the golf course up in Mandeville, in the town of Riverhead. We almost had that acquired recently for open space, the county did. And from our perspective, that is highly desirable. That golf course has had such adverse ecological water quality impacts, quite frankly, and again, an ecosystem that's by its very nature is nutrient poor, and to have all that nitrogen and from fertilizers has been bad. Anyway, we just put this down for, we're hope that the county would get right of first refusal to just be in line. They almost acquired, they made an offer, and it was ultimately turned down. And what happened was, actually, they were looking to sell.
Swan Lake was?
Huh? Yeah, they were looking to get out. And then COVID happened, and people started spending time outdoors, and it increased their financial viability, and so they're back in business.
There was a subdivision.
Catering to golfers, but
Wasn't there a subdivision proposed for that golf course?
no,
No?
no.
There was another one. I don't
Yeah, there's in a
okay.
core, so I can't, yeah. And then 15 is the one I want to just spend a little bit of time with you, if I may, talk about, and that is, if I ask you to look at the last page, I give you the example, it's example only of an old file subdivision. That's at Calverton Ponds, and that's just a close-up of the golf course that I just talked about. But do you see those white lines, the little parcels there? I hope you can make that out. Your eyes are probably better than mine.
Inside.
Anyway,
The old
that
file
is,
map
huh?
Old file map part.
Yeah, you've got all, and you know that, but you've got old file map parcels all throughout the
Yep.
town of Southampton, to a large extent in the Dwarf Pine Plains, northwest section, southwest section, and the problem is that there's still enough privately owned land there that you can't legally have prescribed burn. I can't burn your property without your permission. I can't run a new trail through your property without your permission. And so our hope is that through time, we can acquire all of the remaining privately owned parcels that are in these old file subdivisions within the core preservation area, so our stewardship and management of the Pine Barrens can truly flourish. And we can think about establishing other trails to have enhanced recreational opportunities. Because, last thing I'll say, not if you want to add it, is that we really view the Pine Barrens as Long Island Central Park. I know we tend to, and again, I work with the Brookhaven Town Board all the time, and elected officials, and I don't blame you, often look at, the landscape from a community perspective or a town perspective. This is my town of Brookhaven, or this town of Southampton, and this is, this is my community of, Rocky Point or Mandeville or West Hampton or Flanders or whatever. But in fact, looking at it from an ecological perspective, the Pine Barrens isn't divided by 3 towns. It's one coherent ecosystem of itself. And that's what we're trying to celebrate that and preserve that. And our hope is that with the achievement of this, as well as some other things, that we really can have a Long Island Central Park that becomes a true tourism attraction and help underpin the Long Island economy in a way that more than it does now. I mean, a lot of people go hiking and canoeing in the Pine Barrens now, but we think that we barely tap the potential that the Pine Barrens can offer to Long Islanders and off Long Islanders to visit.
Biking, mountain biking, right? Mountain biking, even.
Yeah, mountain bike, sure. All those outdoor bird watching, even. My goodness, yes. For those of us.
It's
And so that's it. That's the and.
John, a lot of these lots, that the credits have been stripped off, and there's just underlying fees to purchase. Or
It's both. Yeah, some that the credits have been stripped and others no. There's Aunt Dolores in San Diego. She's been sitting with the property since 1985, and again, I did this with the town. And they just we don't hear back from them. They keep paying the property taxes for no reason.
Yeah.
They're getting nothing out of it. They're truly almost they're wasting.
Especially
their
these lots that are way off a road.
Yeah, but you take that
around
piece of
middle
the Door
nowhere.
Pipeline's a mile off the road. That's a quarter acre in size. And somebody in San Diego may think, oh my gosh, one day we're going to benefit from recoup a lot of money. You never.
It's not going to happen now.
And yet we still can't. And because of that, though, we can't implement ecosystem management strategies, and we can't have a full flush recreational access plan until that happens. So that's why I want to underscore number 15 to you about the old file subdivisions. And that's what we want to.
You should work at creating federal, making it federally designated parcels,
Yeah.
the portions
Well,
of
we
that.
did hear from the Corps not that long ago also, because they want to do the management plan, and they're also concerned about the prior testing that was done there back in,
In the Dwarf
World War
Pipeline?
II, and and
Yeah.
they were asking us about, permission to go on to do a survey to make sure there isn't any live ammunition out there.
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah, that's what I was getting to. We have that
Yeah.
issue. We also, with our CPF, we're actually required, and we do, is support the National Estuary, the Peconic Estuary Partnership.
Yeah.
Those kinds of mechanisms, I think, are what you're looking for to make exactly what you're talking about happen.
Right.
Is to be able to designate an area, under a large S, if you will, of a protection system that's federally driven or otherwise. How that works, I don't know, but it's successful with the Peconic Estuary program. It's very successful. We give our CPF, a portion of our CPF funds to that national program. It's a national estuary program, so it seems to carry more clout and seems to solidify the movement a little more around something that has some hope of lasting beyond elected officials.
Right.
Well, again, to back up what John said and to go along with what you said, we selected these properties for what they have to offer, and also to present that they are contiguous to something that has already been preserved, which ties into exactly what you're talking about. And we have a number of educational programs where we're bringing all ages into the Pine Barrens. And we're asking young people, our middle school kids go to college program, we ask our young people to come up with solutions to what they see as a water problem in their community. So we would love to be able to do that in many more communities and to a far greater extent. And if we do have a contiguous area that can be studied, it is more impactful.
Have you been going to the town boards of Riverhead and Brookhaven?
Yeah, we
Town
presented,
this as well?
the first presentation we did was to Riverhead Town Board, and then Brookhaven earlier in the week. And as I mentioned, we're going to the Suffolk County Executive and Legislature. And yeah, we want to make the rounds and include, and obviously
Sure.
present this initiative to everybody that has some relevance to it. So,
Yeah,
Can I just pass out? I wanna-
it's a really
I wanna give
interesting
this to you
point,
all.
what, you
It's
know,
just
what
a-
you're saying, because we have these
shows it
boundaries, our
geographically,
municipal
the parcels that
boundaries,
are outlined.
particularly when we talk about CPF and sharing money. That doesn't seem to work well. Everyone gets territorial. But when those boundaries are broken by a federal program or an estuary, so a national thing like that, that makes a big difference
Yeah.
in
Agreed,
how you
John.
proceed.
Would be.
Yeah.
So that just shows again geographically the areas, and the different colors is that, the difference is the red and the green differentiate the old file subdivision compared to the site-specific, parcels, that's all, just to make it visual for you, so that's.
So the green is, I'm sorry.
Site-specific,
Site.
is old file.
Let me just see it for a second, sorry.
Yeah,
We had that
Yeah.
discussion, John, when we.
right, green is
we
site-specific.
No, the red, it's actually the green site-specific,
Thank you.
the red is the old file
We
subdivision.
had money.
Yeah.
Riverhead doesn't. They have a sewage treatment plant. We don't. We want to try to help develop Riverside, and we were trying to see if there was a situation where we could help them with the CPF
Yeah.
without funding,
No.
and we could work together with them to tie into the sewage treatment plant for the redevelopment of Riverside, and it just, we tried.
Yeah, it's, the only time I've seen similar things successful that cross municipal boundaries are like the national programs. I think it makes everyone feel they're contributing to something that's
Larger.
larger than themselves, yeah.
And it would make sense for the Peconic Bays to be a federal program because it's water.
It's water and it's-
So it's a
yeah, it's a wide
combination of
area.
state, county.
And the Pine Barrens, I mean, that's why, again, we try to have a regional perspective and a regional approach with the Pine Barrens, and it's,
Well, particularly as a significant recharge area.
Yeah, right.
I think that's really critical, so.
that's the best terrestrial example I can give you about what the model you're urging.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure I support that, but Brookhaven ought to have its own CPF program and be able to acquire its own Pine Barrens.
Could not agree with you
pieces.
more.
And it would have, it's a much bigger town, though property values might not be high, but they would be able to meet, I believe, their open space goals if they had that program. It hasn't hurt property values here, certainly. I would not, I'd be reluctant to take our open space funds and see them diverted to areas outside of Southampton.
Oh, we're not suggesting, let me be
No, I
clear,
don't
we're
think
not
anybody's
suggesting
suggesting
that.
that
I
at
thought
all.
that's what you
Oh,
were saying, if it
no,
was
no.
a federally.
No, I don't-
No,
We
no,
can
no,
take
no,
some
no.
of
I
our
don't-
CPF funds and use it to acquire.
No, I'm
land.
saying that
Brookhaven.
just for that reason, it wouldn't work, because
No, no.
we wouldn't want to do that.
We want you to
Other
use your
towns
CPF
don't.
funds
For
to
the properties in your town.
Yeah.
buy land.
Yeah, we understand.
You've got a lot, I'm
And we
very
are.
familiar with the land, you've got a
We
lot
do
of
with
very
the-
important
with the-
targets.
With the
There we are,
estuary
yeah.
program, we do allow some of our CPF funds to be used
It's in
to
the
manage
statute.
the joint resource of the Peconic estuary.
It's very worthwhile, struggles, we,
That's the only area where we
that's great.
see CPF funds going outside of the town.
and it makes a lot of sense, yeah.
But Brookhaven ought to have that program.
Well, if you, maybe we'll have you,
It's not too late.
no,
Maybe-
it's not
maybe
too,
try
I'd be
something
happy
less
to
than
speak in
2%.
Brookhaven.
well, we've we've
No.
talked about that, but
They don't have to do a 2%, even if they did a 1%, even a 0.5%. Would be extraordinary.
I hope you're right. I mean, I still got the scars on my back from that. I mean, we spent, I worked on nothing for like a year to 18 months on this work with,
No, you've been terrific. And
as you
have
know,
a great-
Brian, and it was, Brookhaven is, there's just a lot of communities in Brookhaven. I mean, there was places in Brookhaven, it went, certain EDs, it went down like 70-30. I mean, like Shirley Mastic area, it was,
Really?
they're relatively poor communities. They don't see what's in it for them, and again, maybe we didn't do a great job. I thought we did a good job on the campaign, but I guess we didn't, because it
If
was.
you had a water quality component there, that would be extremely helpful to the
Yeah.
Shirley area.
So to be clear to you, I mean, the town board, again, I go to town board all the time in executive session, working before adding the other members to have them either approve, which they almost always, 99% of the time, or disapprove, but, acquisitions of land. So the town of Brookhaven's got a robust land acquisition program still. It's just not at the scale that folks have.
Well, you have to pay that bond, and that bond's gonna get paid for through property taxes. And, I just presented earlier today the budget for next year in terms of property taxes. And luckily, we don't have to carry debt service on acquiring open space. We have the CPF fund, which brings in as much as all the property taxes except it's, exclusive for water quality and open space. It's a tremendous tool to buy historic buildings, preserve farm, agricultural properties, open space, woodlands, access to public places. It's been tremendous. You don't have that tool, and it's unfortunate.
No, we got the capital budget, and again, and then the whole wrinkle with the town also in terms of its finances, looming, as you know, is the landfill, and the closure of the landfill, and revenue. We call it Mount Cashmore, so that's going to be changing very soon. And so, I work with Annette at a rest all the time, town attorney. She's my boss, and I work, with the supervisor. There's some interest in another bond, but it just has to be the right time. And I'm not talking about just the capital, but I'm talking about a meaningful bond amount.
Yeah.
To the
Brookhaven
supervisor's
residents-
point is that, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The Brookhaven residents are really, they are taxed
Yeah.
more than double than here in the town of Southampton.
That-
And so I can imagine any new idea for kind of transfer tax or anything wouldn't be, I'm not surprised that it went down there. I spent my career teaching in Brookhaven,
And it's very clear from one street, across the street, the taxes can be twice or three times as much as what they might enjoy here. Even though there might be more services, it's still a burden on that taxpayer in school districts. But on the other side of that coin is that the priorities of water quality in particular are much more pronounced, I think, in the average person's psyche and when they're dealing with that. And there's a way to capitalize on
Learning that now, right?
Well,
I'm a little bit scared about
Just on the property.
The CPF model doesn't, the argument, and we keep making the same mistake, is that it's not a tax. It is something that it's a fee paid by the buyer of a home, and he takes that burden, not the taxpayer. So we have a
And that's the
large
problem.
population that think that it's a tax,
And
and it's in their
without
tax
that,
roll.
and
The problem with
Brookhaven-
our campaign, they called it a welcome sucker tax. He sent out mailings, right? He sent out a bunch of mailings on it. We could never get out from under, even though the polling.
But the suckers end up being the people who don't have that program now, who have to carry the debt
these
service
huge bonds.
in their property taxes on those bonds. So it would have been, yes, new arrivals would have been paying for the fund, people who were buying properties there. But now, in the absence of it, you're going to your property taxpayers in an area that already has high property
Here's the problem with
taxes.
your thinking.
It's-
And
It
water
wasn't
bills.
presented
It's a
correctly.
you've got a sophisticated thought there. It's a slightly sophisticated argument. That's tough to present to the
Well,
public.
I can tell you in
You're right.
Southampton, it's helping keep property taxes down. The fact that we're not under pressure to borrow $50 million to buy open space. I have the $50 million available. I don't have to put that debt service on the backs of the property taxpayers.
Right, yep.
So it's, it plays out in real time every day here.
Yeah, yeah.
It has helped keep property taxes low.
Plus, nobody wants all those services out here, too. That's helpful.
It also helps keep property values high because all these common lands are publicly owned. So, it provides relative predictability about the future. When you're buying a house in Southampton, the landscape isn't going to change that much because all those open spaces now are largely preserved.
Right.
And so,
Oh, you've done a wonderful job.
Yeah.
We're about
Jealous when I
5,000
look east.
acres, but
And
we
it-
still have about
so-
1,000 more in our priority area, so I don't quite agree with what the supervisor said. We
and
have
those-
more priorities.
and those common
still.
lands add value to everybody's property because they're parks that they can use, whether it's for hiking or kayaking, whatever it might be. It adds value to, and we have seen that in the acceleration of property values out here since we've done the CPF. So
Can I
it's
throw-
made
yeah.
affordable housing challenging.
Right, right.
But other than that, it's been a tremendous success on every level.
Yeah. Throw out one other very quick thing to you, my mind, and that is the lands. I've been hiking out Southampton, even though I live in Setauket, come out here, and the Camps Pond area? That is just,
Kettle hole.
I want to let you know, that is one of the most stunning kettle holes and geological depressions. That is an absolute classroom that I've ever seen. I've been doing this for wear my other hat. I
It's amazing.
work for Seatucket. We're doing an island-wide vernal pool inventory. That Camps Pond area is just fantastic. You have a problem there, though. I can show you the photo. There's a car that's been abandoned there. It's been sitting there for decades. And it really detracts. It's on your land, based on, and it's kind of, so,
It's not in the pond.
it's not in the pond, it's up,
Okay,
it's
'cause I was there.
to the north of the pond.
It's not my
So
Mustang
where is,
that I
where
lost
is,
in high
where
school.
is this,
I actually lost it on Facebook, and people were saying what year.
This is in the North Sea Southampton area, in the Marine area.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
It's,
You guys have done
it's
a
off
wonderful
Little
job
Nyack
there.
Path.
It's so beautiful.
I haven't been up there to see this, so
I'd love to take you up there.
Gorgeous.
It is.
yeah.
You're right, it's an
We also have
excellent
a southern-
example of a
It is,
kettle
it is like textbook. You can't find a
Was
better
it a
example.
CPF acquisition?
That I don't know.
It's surrounded by Southampton Town as well
Yes.
as Suffolk County lands
Suffolk
and then
County.
private lands
You
to
can't
the
come up
south.
with a better
We currently
geological-
have a
As far as on
CPF
our property?
environmental, if I can, we currently have
World
a
class.
purchase for the horse barn to the south of Camps Pond. There's a major southern pine beetle infestation
There
in
is-
there
there is,
as
yeah,
well.
that's right, yeah.
So we were out surveying it and.
I might, I don't get if your time, I could see if I could find
Yeah, I'd
it.
like to take a look at it, but we should be able to get that car out of
Yeah.
there. I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm
I
asking.
didn't know, I mean, I
Oh,
I
yes,
went,
look,
I saw the pond, I walked around it, I didn't see the car.
There's the car.
I was just asking whether it's CPF.
Nope,
'cause
not
then
mine.
could
I
use
remember that
CPF
guy.
stewardship.
I had a car stolen once too. I thought it might be mine, but mine was a Volkswagen, so.
What was it?
That's, this is just, and again, you can see, so this is the car, and this is Camps Pond here.
Why don't you start it up and drive it out of there?
Yeah. It'll be a little bit of work.
Bring a few
The
tools.
engine still there?
Anyway, it's a really, I mean, quite
Gas
see
tank?
from here, but it's, anyway,
So,
kudos to you.
that was
Camps
Woods
Pond.
driving.
If you
in
follow
there,
up with
isn't
me,
it?
I'll-
That was
Porsche,
the
it's
thing.
detracting from your,
Yeah, I'll work on getting the
We used to
car.
have Woods cars back in the 60s, 70s,
Oh.
back in all of this areas.
We've cleaned up debris, from,
Sure.
dumping.
well, I figure you
All the
got a
time,
good
like-
land management
If it's,
department, right?
well,
Thanks for
CPF
letting us know.
stewardship could pay for it if it's on CPF land, but, yeah,
Yeah, you
either
guys
way.
do
we-
great work.
Have our rangers go up and take a look at it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you so much, very
Happy to be a
informative.
resource to you, again,
You have a card?
no, of course not. Why would-
We can find you.
Jim knows how to get all that. I'm-
Yeah, well, sometimes I'm afraid where he'll send me.
John,
This is good work.
Again, Nina, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so
Bye.
much,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Have a good day.
You too.
Think about it. Hard to know if there's any environmental person like that. So-
All right, so we can just go briefly through updates. I know there's been big festivals and things like that in town that you guys may want to talk about. Today was budget day, so, my life has sort of been largely focused on getting the budget together and presenting that. But if you guys want to go through some other updates.
I just have a quick one. We just got a notice from the county for the Andrew Spilka Park. They're going to start work on a sidewalk that goes on the south side, from River Road to Andrew Spilka Park. And I want to give great thanks to Assemblyman Thiel for helping us with school sidewalks to schools funding for that. And I think the work will be starting sometime at the end of October, first part of November. And the notice has gone out to the few homeowners along there, but the community is excited about that because we'll be able to now use parking, and thanks to the Eastport Mandeville School, we'll be able to park there, be able to use the crosswalk from the school, walk down the south side sidewalk that goes directly to the new park. We had been a lot of back and forth with the county trying to get a crosswalk, and I thought it was a simple solution, but they didn't want to put in the crosswalk. They wanted to put in the sidewalks, which I think the homeowners on that side are happy about because their kids now will be protected. They can get to school from the south side of the south. It's a great project, and I'm exhausted for the 3 years that we've had to work on getting this to happen. But it's
Other
finally
updates?
happening.
Tommy John, you have anything you want to share?
Yeah, last Monday night, we had a mass casualty, a tour of the Suffolk County Mass Casualty van. It holds 21 people, and I want to give thanks to the Southampton Volunteer Ambulance Corps, Ian King, Donna Kreinborg, Joe Ricardo, and from from Stony Brook, Southampton, Frank Miltza, they put this together, and our different ambulance corps, even from East Hampton, came and they toured the mass casualty trailer, which is really very important. The town also had our mass casualty trailer out there, so the different corps could go out and see how they're used, get a tour of some of the equipment, so that in the unlikely event that they're needed, we're familiar with them. Also, we did have our trout pond cleanup on Saturday. I know that it was a busy weekend. That's why, I want to thank the Noyak Civic Council for providing the help and organization. We had about 15 volunteers, and special thanks to Daryl, Assistant Parks Director Daryl Balmer, and Parks Director Kristen Doulos, who got the DEC permit to do this. It's going to last 3 years, the DEC permit, and we're doing it again in the springtime, and you're all invited. Trout pond has invasive species, not just kabamba, but a plant called milfoil. It's just taken over in the pond. So we cleaned a lot of that out, so the pond's more usable.
All right, thank you. Rick?
So a couple of things. I think I said it at the board meeting before that we did have the San Gennaro Feast this weekend. I want to thank the town for all their help on getting that done, but also to Ryan Murphy. He brought the fire marshal's office, animal control, and code right to the fair. So, and also our TLC members were there handing out coloring books, meeting the public, answering questions. It was really great outreach for the community. They were busy all day, and they had quite a few members there. It was nice to see them there. Also, Lynn Arthur from the Sustainability Committee was there. She had some EVs. She's trying to work on some grant money and programs that we have, working for the town. She spent, I want to say, 22 hours on site with the cars, talking to everybody, made a little speech on the stage. She did a great job there. The Parks and Rec's always a great help, and I was happy to see Kristen here because she was smiling to say that summer was over. But I really want to remind her that the activities at our parks never stop. If you go down to Red Creek Park, if you go out to SYS, they're packed, till there's frost on the ground. And we are working on some new recreational facilities for the town. I think it's a great thing. I think they're needed. So she's going to be a tremendous force in that. The Youth Bureau, we just opened, I think, the 5th Little Pantry. It was in Bridgehampton this past Monday at the Bridgehampton Methodist Church. Lynn, our director, and I were there to kind of christen it, fill it. It's nice, but it's a good little thing. There's little pantries all over town. The food insecurity that we found through the pandemic continues. So it's nice to have little things going on to help as well as the big things that we do.
Thank you, Rick. Cindy?
Honor Flight Long Island. I don't know if the town board is aware, in 2008, the town board agreed to not only allow V. Bennett to work on Honor Flight Long Island matters, but they also gave them $25,000 in seed money to basically start up the program, do advertising, find veterans. And since 2008, Honor Flight Long Island has flown over 1,900 World War II, Korean War, and Vietnam veterans. They have flown over 70 veterans from Southampton town and over 100 from the eastern end of Long Island. V. Bennett has retired. Jamie Bowden took over that role with Honor Flight, is doing an amazing job. I had the honor of being a guardian on their flight last Friday. We flew 50 veterans from 3 wars down to DC. It was a long day. We left at 5:30 in the morning and we were back at 11:30 at night. When I say it was one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had to visit each memorial with the veterans that fought in those wars, I can't describe what a difference it is than just visibly seeing a monument. Hearing their stories, seeing the tears, it was an emotional, amazing day. I was an honor guard for Mr. Michael Cardito, who's a 92-year-old Korean War veteran. We had a great day. They had, and I have to say, there was not a veteran on that flight that did not thank Jamie Bowden for the amazing work that she does on that program and make sure that everybody has what they need and everything runs smoothly. But I shared a video when we got off the flight and in an ice slip, and the crowd of people that showed up at 11:30 at night to welcome these veterans home. But in the video, the first person that welcomes my veteran home is Steve Russell, who was a board member for Honor Flight Long Island. Tragically, Steve Russell was killed in a car accident yesterday morning. He leaves behind his wife Janet and 3 children. His wife Janet is also on the board of directors for Honor Flight. An amazing man. He runs everything that has to do with Islip Airport through the program. He trains all of the Guardians. I actually sat through a training session with him, and we lost an amazing person. So my thoughts and prayers are with his wife and family. And I hate to end on a sad note like that, but when I say what an amazing program, and I'm so proud that our town is a part of that program.
I was able to participate a few years back in it, and it was really moving. And I just remember like going through one of the airport terminals with this parade of veterans. Many of them were in wheelchairs, and everybody sort of stopped who was waiting at their gates, and they saw it. They stopped what they were doing. They turned, and there was like a spontaneous standing ovation for everybody coming through. It was really heartfelt and really moving. It's a great organization, what they do.
Mr. Cardito actually summed it up when we got into Baltimore Airport. They had a water cannon salute on the plane, and then we go into the terminal, and everybody stopped and was applauding. And he's in the wheelchair, and he kept saying to me all day, he's like, this is an adventure. But he turned to me and he said, all that garbage they show you on TV, he said, that's not America. This is America.
Yeah.
And it was the whole day. I mean, 20-something-year-old young men dropping their bags and coming over to thank them for their service and have conversations with them. It was an amazing day.
Well,
Yeah.
all right. One other reminder, the downtown revitalization and the efforts to, engage the community in planning for the future of downtown Hampton Bays. In October's, so not next Thursday, the following Thursday, or is it next Thursday? It is next Thursday. Wow, it's that soon already. So every Thursday in October, so starting next, a week from today, the 6th, 4 to 6, at the Public Safety Building, right next to the Senior Center. I'll be there. You guys are welcome to join me, and members of the planning department or land planning, whoever, but it's really just basically to create an opportunity to hear what's on people's minds, thoughts about what downtown currently is, what it could be, sewers, sidewalks, cultural venues, all of that, traffic, whatever people want to talk about related to downtown. And, I'm looking forward to trying to see if there's some areas of common interest, and so we can move forward. All right, with that, we do have executive session items. So we have personnel, litigation, contracts, and I guess that's it. So I'll make a motion to end our work session and go into executive session on those items.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Bouvier. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned for all other purposes.